How's everyone today? Excellent, good. Hope everybody enjoyed their World Conference. I know I did. I want to thank Matt for accepting me and allowing me to come and join in on this presentation. Very excited to see everybody here, interested in psychology. It's an exciting topic. So just a heads up, it's going to be probably the least formal presentation you've seen all week. Okay, it's going to be a little bit more interactive, so it's going to be a little bit more fun. That's what I was told to do, have fun with it, so that's what we're going to do. Okay, so let's get started. Despite what you might think, these two circles are not the same size. What I need you to determine is which one is bigger than the other. Is it the red one? Raise your hand if you think it's the red one. Is it the blue one? Okay. Now, before I said anything, what was your first instinct? That they're the same size. That's because they are the same size. Yet I got just about every single one of you to raise your hand. So what did we learn? That we can easily be manipulated, just like that, right? So now that I've had my little fun, manipulated you a little bit, how do I earn back your trust? Because I've probably already just lost it. So how do we earn trust? How do we gain trust? Matt touched on trust. It's a very important topic, and that's what's the main focus of today. So before I get into it, I just want to go through a few branches of psychology, just so we can properly understand the psychological lens that we're going to be looking through. So a few areas of psychology. Developmental psychology. And what that is, it's the study of an individual and his lifespan, and more specifically, the decisions they make and the effects that those decisions have on their life. Okay, so it's very straightforward. Evolutionary psychology, which is one of my favorites. And evolutionary psychology it can tie back any behavior we do today, any decisions we make today, and it can tie it back to primitive times. For example, how do men and women choose their mate? Right? I already see smiles on people's faces. So, according to evolutionary psychology, men tend to be less selective than women. Why is that? Well, because men can have as many children as they want, right? Assuming they seek different mates. Versus women, they have a certain amount of children they can bear, right? Keep in mind, this is primitive times, right? So another reason is because a woman has to carry a child for 9 months. She has more responsibility. She has to carry that child for 9 months, and then she has to raise that child. Versus a man can do whatever he needs to do and then leave. Primitive times. Yeah. Forensic psychology. So when I say forensic psychology, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Right. Crime, criminals. A lot of people think of the show Criminal Minds. I don't know if everybody knows it, but it's a bunch of people in one room trying to figure out what's the next move of the criminal or the psychopath, or what is he thinking? Now, that show is a little far-fetched, but there's some truth in it. But mostly it's the study of legal matters. So, for example, the study I'm thinking about is they had this university professor go teach her class, and they told her, put your purse on the desk. And midway through the course, they had somebody run in, take the purse, run out. And then they asked the students, describe that person. Descriptions were everywhere. Man, woman, hat, blue, black, long hair, short hair. So in the psychology world, eyewitness testimony is not a significant way to determine if somebody is innocent or guilty. Cognitive psychology and social psychology. And cognitive psychology is really the study about what's going on in the brain, okay, physically. So what parts of the brain are being activated when I'm making decisions, when I'm being trusted or choosing to trust somebody, when I'm experiencing happiness, sadness, speaking different language, using memory, and so on and so on. You get the idea. And then social psychology is what I studied in. That's my areas of expertise. And that's really how does an individual affect others around them and his surroundings, and vice versa. So, as Matt said, I conducted 2 theses. And during my studies, my first thesis was on first impressions. Normally when there's a lot more women in the room, I hear, oh, when they see the dog, but I'm a dog person, okay? And those who know me know that. So I wanted to know, how does a dog affect people's first impression of me, right? So imagine I'm walking down the street, I have a dog versus not having a dog. Somebody sees me, and then what are they thinking? Well, for one, I'm more approachable. Okay, these are the findings. I'm more approachable. And they've done studies where they've had men try to pick up numbers from girls, and with a dog, without a dog. With a dog, 9 times out of 10, you're successful. You're welcome. I'm also seen as healthier, more attractive, more active, and happier. So if you're thinking of getting a dog, just get one. Okay, don't think about it too much. And my second study, which is what Matt was talking about earlier, and I'm not going to get into it too much. We can get into it after the presentation, because I'm going to lose the crowd, I'm going to get bombarded with questions, and I'm going to have paranoia floating around the room everywhere. It was on infidelity. Okay. Who knows Friends? I'm a big fan. We were on a break. So I wanted to know what causes somebody to cheat, right? What drives that person to go ahead and commit infidelity? Well, I tied it back to 5 major personality traits. Okay, I'm not going to get into it. But basically, depending how you scored on those 5 personality traits will determine if you're more likely to cheat. So in the end, I argued, are we born cheaters? Are we predisposed to cheat? And obviously, if you cheat, well, you didn't earn that person's trust, right? So let's talk about trust. But before I get into it, I just want to mention that we're talking about trust within relationships. Whether those relationships be personal or professional, whatever we're going to see today, it's applicable to both, okay? So we're more focused on the professional side of things. Obviously, we're here, World Conference. It's not so much personal. So achieving trust within these relationships can significantly reduce cost and risk, okay? Simply by making those relationships better for everybody within them, so better for all parties, and it allows that team, that relationship to work more effectively, more efficiently. So what are the 3 major areas that psychologists are interested in? Well, for one, we want to know, what does it take to earn trust? What are the ingredients that I need in order to have trust in my relationship? And I also want to know, right, the cognitive side. I want to know what's happening in the brain, what areas of the brain are being activated when I'm choosing to trust somebody or somebody's choosing to trust me. And most recently, we want to know how fast we're making those decisions. So let's do a little exercise. You guys ready? Oh. Which one of these 2 faces looks more trustworthy to you? Is it the one on the right? Right. And most people say that. And I just noticed he kind of looks like me. So I hope I look more trustworthy to you now. So I took this picture from a study they conducted where they had about 50 sets of faces like this. And they would show participants these faces on a screen, and they would show it for about 5 seconds. They would ask the participant, check off who's more trustworthy. Basically what we just did, okay, right or left. And then when they were done with those 50, they would reshuffle them and show them again, but this time only for 1 second. And they did it again for 500 milliseconds and 300 milliseconds. Well, it turns out that we're making the same decisions within the 5-second condition, just like the 300 millisecond condition. So we're choosing to trust people within 300 milliseconds. So that in itself is not really trustworthy. So what measurement do psychologists use to measure trust? Well, we have something called the trust game. The trust game is very simple. You have player 1 in one room. We give him a sum of money. And you have player 2 in another room. we also give them a sum of money, but not as much as player 1. Now the experimenter goes to player 1 and says, every time that you're going to give me money, I'm going to take that money and triple it and give it to player 2. So player 1 has a choice. Do I keep the money, don't play the game, or do I give some money in hopes that that trust is reciprocated? Then once that player 2 gets the money, then they have a choice. Do I keep the money and run, or do I give some money back and keep playing the game? So let's see an example. Player 1 starts with 300, player 2 starts with 1. Player 1 decides to give $100. The experimenter takes it, triples it, gives it to player 2. So any rational theory, well, actually, where do we end up here? We end up with $200 for player 1 and then $400 with player 2. So any rational theory, any economic theory will say player 2 should take the money and run. Well, in this case, a lot of the times what we found was that we're being very irrational. But it's a good thing this time. Player 2 ends up giving more money than what player 1 originally decided to give. So player 2 in this example gives back $200. So where do we end up? $400 for player 1 and $200 for player 2. So what do we find? In a relationship where trust is present, everyone benefits. The relationship flourishes. And also, the longer that these players played the game, the more trust they built. And those who were the most successful at the game were the ones who were able to put themselves in the other person's shoes. So, those who scored higher in empathy were more successful at the trust game. But what if player 2 decides, I'm going to take the money and run? Right? Well, one study decided to put a little twist at the end, and they decided to include the revenge factor. Okay? So, my WebQuarters team's here, I'm going to use them. Alan, let's assume that you're player 1, and you've been playing the game. And Jim here decides he's going to take the money and run. Okay? I'm going to come in, I'm going to say, Alan, I have a particular set of skills, and I can find Jim. And when I find Jim, I'm going to give you a chance to go into your checking account, and if you take out $100 and you give it to me, I'm going to take from Jim $200. If you give me 4, I'm going to take from him $800. Would you do it? Yeah. Exactly. And most people did that. Okay? So most people chose to use revenge. By the way, you're married and you have kids. Keep it that way, because the way you're playing this game, divorce is not good for you, my friend. So, just an interesting side note. Those who committed revenge, those who chose to use revenge, cognitive side, right? The same part of the brain that got activated is the same part as those who were experiencing pleasure. Okay? Just a little side note I found interesting. So what have we seen so far? Earning trust. What are the ingredients? Well, first impressions, facial expressions. We're making those decisions within 300 milliseconds. We're choosing to trust somebody that fast. Empathy in the trust game, right? Those who scored higher in empathy, they were better at playing the trust game. And now, common interest. Well, for common interest, I decided to use the example of the doctor and his patients, because at no point in time did I ever go see a doctor and think, I think this guy's trying to kill me, right? I'm here, I'm sick, I need to get healthy again, and he's in the same room with me thinking the same thing. My patient is sick, I need to get him healthy. And because we have common interest, I choose to trust him. So I let him ask me these super invasive questions. I also let him conduct these invasive tests. And every man in this room, over 40, knows exactly what I'm talking about. But what if I was to go buy a car from this guy? Right? And who's seen the movie Matilda here? Excellent. So that individual here is a sleazy salesman. He's rewinding the odometers. He's sticking back the bumpers on the car. not trustworthy whatsoever. You can tell facial expression, everybody reacted. You all knew exactly what I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to buy a car. I see this guy, and I want to make sure before we talk about cars that he has winter tires. Because I'm Canadian, and in Canada, you absolutely need winter tires, right? So I tell him I need winter tires. So he tells me, well, they're $100 a piece, but if you come back next week, they're 50% off. Do I start trusting him? Most likely. I'm starting to trust this guy. And I took that example from a study they conducted in a restaurant. So let's imagine a waiter goes up to a table of 4. He tells the first guy, okay, what are you going to be having today? And the first guy says, I'm going to have the fish. I like the fish. And I say, well, you know what? The fish here, it's not so good. It's very expensive. I would go with the chicken. That's what we're known for, and it's excellent. It's way less expensive. And so a lot of times that person would agree. What do you think happened with the next 3? Every time that waiter made a suggestion, that person would agree, even though it was more expensive, because he's put aside his self-interest and aligned his interest with the first person, with the group. And so that's how that works. Competence. Competence is also directly related with costs. Today we have BAs, we have senior BAs, we have employees, executives, VPs, CEOs, and we pay more for senior people. We pay more with people with more experience, more education, because we believe those people are more competent in achieving the tasks that we give them. Now, competence is situation specific. So here we have Chip and Joanna Gaines. Okay, Chip and Joanna, who knows them? Right, everybody has a show somehow of renovations. I think these guys do it the best. They buy a fixer-upper, they fix it up, and they make it a dream home for a certain couple. Well, Chip does the construction, and Joanna does the design. And then we have Chef Gordon Ramsay. Everybody knows Chef Gordon Ramsay, right? Hell's Kitchen. Now, I wouldn't trust Chef Gordon Ramsay to build me my house, just like I wouldn't trust Chip to make my meal, although Chip looks like he'd make a pretty good sandwich. So it's very contextual, okay? Very situation specific. Integrity. What position in society do you think holds the most integrity? Who said that? Exactly. That's what I took. The judge. Judge Judy. Who doesn't know Judge Judy? Everybody knows Judge Judy, right? She's yelling at everybody. So, first look, she's smiling. She looks pretty trustworthy, right? 300 milliseconds. Bam. I'm deciding to trust her. Does she have empathy? Well, I'm not thinking she's going to laugh at everybody that's coming to seek justice. And those who are coming to seek justice, she's there to do exactly that. So they have common interest. Competence, well, she's well-dressed, so she's presenting herself as a judge. So automatically, I'm assuming that she had X amount of years of school. She obviously worked as a lawyer, and now she's a judge, and she's been a judge. So notice that just as I presented somebody, you didn't know the example. I said, what do you think? And this gentleman said judge. So just by saying judge, you automatically checked off all these boxes that we've been seeing. So the position that you decide to choose to present yourself in has a big impact, okay? So as an example, I used to work at Mercedes-Benz, okay? And when I started in sales at Mercedes-Benz, a client would walk through the door, look around the showroom, go see the receptionist, and say, do you have a sales guy or a salesman that can help me? That receptionist would get up, come see me. Christophe, are you ready? Yeah, okay, good, you're not busy. She'd introduce me. Sir, ma'am, this is Christophe, our salesman. He's going to help you out. Right away, walls, right? I see it in their faces. They're standoffish. They don't trust me. Now I got to jump through hoops and jump hurdles and just try to earn their trust so I can then start my sales process, right? So I realized that. I noticed that. And then I said, you know what, I got to change this. Something has to happen. So I went to talk to the receptionist, and I asked her, the next time you decide to introduce me as a selection specialist. So I took away the whole sales concept, the whole idea of sales. I'm not trying to sell you anything here. You're here to select a vehicle, and I'm the best at doing that, okay? So the next time she introduced me, somebody walked in, went to see her, she came to see me. Sir, ma'am, this is Christophe, our selection specialist, car selection specialist. He's gonna help you out. Totally different reaction, right? Super inviting. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm gonna help you select a car. I'm also aligning my interest with you, right? So then, a few months later, I'm seeing that this stuff works, right? I have money now. I'm at 100% commission, so it's a do or die, okay? So then, I decided to put a little cherry on top, okay? And I decided to tell her, the next time you introduce me as a selection specialist and product genius. And when they did that, it was like butter, man. It was super easy, right? I would tell you I started halfway through my sales process right away. Like I cut half of it, okay? It was that much easier. Communication. Communication is a really big one. It's a big topic. I don't want to get into too much detail, so we're going to go at a high level right now, but I'll revisit it. Verbal versus nonverbal. Obviously, everybody heard that most of our communication is through body language and not just our words spoken. Well, I really break it down here. And body language, this is, by the way, a lot of research is behind this. It's not just, made up figures. So body language, you use 55%, tonality at 38%, and words spoken only at 7%. So body language, what's a good example? So I would say it's body positioning, right? So if I'm talking to another man or a woman is talking to another woman, so same-sex interaction, I don't want to be face-to-face in a squared-off position because it's talking to the subconscious, and the subconscious is interpreting that as confrontational. I want to be at a 45-degree or 180-degree. And I've done this with my team where I point this out during the World Conference, and I said, you see what's going on there? That's what's going on. You see what's going on there? That's what's going on. So this we do naturally without even noticing because you're going to feel uncomfortable if I'm right there in your face talking to you and there's not enough distance, right? When we're talking to the opposite sex, it's the complete opposite. So if I'm talking to a woman, I want to be at least 2 feet apart, and I want to be showing my hands. I need to have my hands visible, at least until trust is earned. When trust is earned, completely different story. Tonality. Now with tonality, you have to think about it as a direct communication line to the subconscious. And tonality, I can send out a message like something is important, certainty, scarcity, secretive, reasonable. You see what I just did there? So I used my tone to indicate that that's reasonable, okay? Words spoken, although only 7%, the words that you choose to use are very important. And what I'm thinking about is a study they conducted at the bank. And there was a huge lineup at the bank. And they would try to cut the line, okay? And somebody would go in and say, do you mind if I cut in? I'm late. Only 40% of the people allowed that person to cut in line. But when he added the word because, he got over 90% compliance. So same example, same excuse. Do you mind if I cut in line because I'm late? Over 90% of the people agreed, and they complied. Benevolence. This is the last one, I promise. Just be kind. Your client needs to know that you care. And who do I think that we all know in common that best describes all these? IFS CEO Darren Loose. So you look at Darren here, he sees a vision, he's looking into the horizon, he has a nice suit on, we trust him, we believe he's competent, He's proving himself that he can do it, and we're all here for a reason. We're all here because we trust him. But if I can get serious for a moment, with Matt, you saw the 6-box model on a more technical side, right? Net present value, so on and so on. Lots of figures. I want to see it from a human perspective. I want to look at it from a psychological point of view, and now I'm going to look at it more specifically from a trust point of view. And during the business initiatives, at this point, we're aligning interest, right? What are your goals? What do you want to achieve? What's your vision? And I need to be on the same page, right? I also put first impressions because, as you saw, we're making these decisions to trust somebody within 300 milliseconds. So at this point, it's probably the first few contacts that I'm having with the client, and so I'm building that first impression. Communication. I don't want to focus on the how when it comes to communication. I want to focus on the how much, the frequency. Like, if we look back at the trust game, the longer they played, the more trust they built, right? So the more contact I have with the client, the more chances I have to build that trust. So that's what the main focus here when I talk about communication. And benevolence, obviously I'm kind, and I'm assuring that my client, I care, okay? So communication and benevolence, you're going to see throughout all the 6 boxes, and so I'm not going to go through them every single time. As is landscape. Empathy. I'm not just understanding how the business works, what are your processes. I want to actually experience your pain points. I want to put myself in my client's shoes. During the obstacle box, well, I put competence because for the first 2 boxes, what I'm doing is information gathering, right? I'm not really contributing to anything. I'm just gathering information, doing some research, and during the obstacles, at this point, I might do some contributions. I might make some suggestions. To be landscape. And at this point, I'm not aligning interests anymore. I have common interests. We have our common interests. I also put competence because I'm also making contributions. And during the enablers, the big one here is integrity. Because although Matt said it's not just IFS, it's a lot more things, I want to focus more on, if I find that myself, my team, my product is not a good fit, I have to draw the line. Honesty goes a long way. And finally, the business case, right? At this point, I'm the expert, right? I've proven it, I'm competent, I'm coming in with a solid business case, I've communicated this whole time with my client. The integrity, the figures that we're seeing in the business case are from a joint effort, right? They're not made up, research, information gathering, and all that good stuff. And obviously, I'm the kindest person in the world, and I care so much. Now, I'm looking at this from a trust point of view, right? From a trust perspective. I can switch that up and erase all that and look at it from a motivational point of view. What motivated my client in the first place to seek out a new ERP system? Once I understand those motivational factors, can I have influence over them? I can erase all that and look at it from a communication point of view. And now I want to know the how, right? How do I position myself for success? How do I adjust my body language according to my audience? What tonality do I use at certain key moments? What words do I use to achieve certain results? And like Matt mentioned, it can even go as far as the colors I chose to wear and the colors I choose in my presentation. So basically, when all is said and done, what is the optimal delivery system of a 6-box model? And that, my friends, is another presentation for another day. Thank you for your time.